Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Media's New Deal, presented by Oxford Road. Media's New Deal is designed to help you adapt your advertising to current market conditions in order to come out of the crisis stronger than you were before. But today is going to be entirely different. I'm your host, Dan Granger, founder and CEO of Oxford Road. We had a different episode set to be released today, but we've pushed it back in light of the events of the last week. By now, we've all watched as a man named George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin, a police officer, on video. We must now decide how to respond. What is our role in all of this, and how can we be truly constructive as Americans, as business leaders, and as marketers? I really don't know what the right answers are, and frankly, I'm afraid to even discuss the topic. But I'm hoping that a first step in being part of the solution is suspending that fear so that we can have an honest conversation and grow. I called my friend Allan Jones, a person that I respect and who understands these issues in a way that I cannot. I first got to know Allan while he was CMO of ZipRecruiter and have had the good fortune to collaborate with him at his current company, Bambee, where he is founder and CEO. Bambee is a fast growth tech company that helps small businesses get dedicated HR support for $99 a month. And we're going to talk more about his business later. Most importantly, he's going to share his perspective and help us understand the topic a little more deeply than we did before. Allan, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
First question, we'll keep it light. Do you remember when we met? Do you remember our first encounter together?
Well, you make me sound like a jerk after I say no. I don't.
It didn't mean as much to you. That's fine. So I'll just tell you, we were collaborating on a piece of copy for ZipRecruiter's first advertising campaign that wasn't digital, and I'm going back and forth with you on a document. We had not met face to face, and boy. I'm thinking, who is this? Who is this guy? Well, you had all these opinions. And my problem was I'm used to getting a lot of opinions back. I'm not used to them being really, really good. And I feel like we started collaborating and we started vibing, and that copy ran for a long time.
Was that copy for the original ad?
That was the first ad.
Oh, yeah.
That was the first ad that we wrote together. And I'll just never forget getting to know you through the process of negotiating a script and going, okay, this is a real sparring partner. And I feel like it's been a bit of a metaphor for our partnership ever since, through several businesses. And the fact that I think we've made beautiful music together.
Yeah, same here. Look, I think, I consider you a dear friend. I've been wondering today, I was cautious to have this conversation.
For sure.
And I've been thinking, I wake up every day as a human. I go and run my company every day as a chief executive, as a founder. And it's actually the world that reminds me of my color, right? It's not myself. I wake up as a human first. And I just felt like, you and I have done a really good job, I think, realizing where our thread of humanity is together, and then building a really awesome friendship around that thread in a way that a lot of people, I think, could learn from. And so, yeah, I feel the same. Happy to be here. Here's to more places together.
Thank you. So, Allan, for those that don't know you or who you are, and don't know how you got to where you are, can you just give us the 30,000 foot view of where you've been and what you've done to get from, how you started to where you are today?
Yeah. I'll try not to make it, you've heard the story 30,000 times. So I'll try not to make it too long, but, born and raised in Los Angeles, didn't go to college, typical kind of founder entrepreneur story. I was born in a town called Lynwood, California, which is actually the name of my dog. Right next to Compton. Both of my parents were also raised and born in that area. grandfather from Mississippi, grandmother from Louisiana on one side, grandmother and grandparents from Puerto Rico on the other side. It's funny that this is happening now because I remember growing up in Los Angeles during the Rodney King riots, right, where I could smell the smoke and see black clouds from the house when I was playing in the front yard, completely unaware of what was going on. I think I was 7 or 8, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
But all I remember is the smell, which is amazing. I'm not sure that I put my finger on the fact that it was riots until I was in my teens. And then you could trace back that memory. But middle class family, dad's an electrician, mom's a nurse. For the most part, my parents ran small businesses growing up, right? My dad ran a pager shop. My grandmother, Baptist Christian woman, Louisiana, ran a dress shop specifically for really targeted market, like specifically for Black women who liked really big hats. I didn't really see a lot of customers in there much, but I grew up behind the register, right? I was ringing people up when I was in my single digits, and the same for my dad's pager shop. And I love transacting. And so once I realized I was not going to go to college, I realized that by dropping out abruptly. I got a job from a woman who I met at a concert who saw me. She saw this, I was very, very tiny. It's like 5'8", 110-pound brown boy behind her at a Mariah Carey concert, singing my ass off with a couple of cocktails in me. And
as you should.
As I should. I mean, someone's got to sing at the Mariah Carey concerts now. She's not doing it. And I'm just kidding. If Mariah sees that, I really am. That was a joke. I love her.
She does listen, but that's okay. I'm sure she, if she gets to know you better,
I will hang up now if she listens. You take that back.
She's a big fan.
But no, look, I meet this woman. She's a Filipino woman. And the reason I'm going to go into race, because I think in the overall arc of this conversation, it's important. And she meets me and she says, "You're smart. I'm going to offer you a job." And I'm thinking, "You're full of shit." We can curse here, right? It's a podcast. Great. Yeah. I'm thinking you're full of shit. And, I followed up with her the second month. At the time, I was a teller at a business bank in Upland, California. I respond to her. I email her 3 times. She does not answer her email. At some point, 4 months later, I hate my job. I've dropped out of college, and coincidentally had just got kicked out of my house because I'm gay. And so that's a whole nother thread we can tap into. Happy Pride Month.
Well, I'm sorry, you're how old at this time?
I'm 19. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm 19. And it speeds up, I promise, the story from here.
No. This is good.
Okay. She finally follows up with me, and she emails me and says, "Hey, sorry, I've been out of town in the Philippines. Please come into my Westwood office and interview." I drive to Westwood. I'm excited. I'm on the 10 freeway. Never driven in 10 freeway rush traffic before. Took me 3 hours there, 3 hours back. I was like, I'm not built for this life. I get there. It's a 5-hour Google-style interview. When they're asking me questions like, how many pennies can you fit in the back of a pickup truck? And, how do you peel an apple? Just like broad kind of, let me see how you think questions. And I thought I failed miserably. I'm driving home. I call my mom. I'm like, there's no way I got this job. And I got a call from the recruiter that gave me the job. That was my very first job in technology, because a woman saw something in me and decided to make a bet. I was woefully unqualified for the job. And I spent my life, I think, my career overcompensating for the fact that I've always felt woefully unqualified for the job that I was always in, which I think gives you a bunch of grit. Things sped up fairly quickly from there. I joined a company called My Life as a product manager when I was around 20, was the head of product at a company called DocStock when I was 21, that sold to Intuit, was acquired by Intuit, raised money for my first company at 23 out of a VC firm called Science, based here in Los Angeles, funded Dollar Shave Club, Hello Society, which was acquired by the New York Times, some really, really blue chip great businesses. And then at 26, went on to be the CMO of ZipRecruiter, where I ran marketing, new products and services, account management, business analytics, business operations, customer service, and dotted line engineering and design into the group. And really, I think, kind of found my footing as an operational executive. And I think my compensation calibration caught up. where I stopped overcompensating and learned who I was as a professional. It took some years, but I got there. Started Bambee a few years ago when I was 29. I'm now 33, and the rest is history.
Unbelievable. And so talk about Bambee and why Bambee. You know, I gave a quick summary up top, but like, tell us a little bit more about what that is and why you did it.
Remember the story I told you my dad had growing up? One day, he fired someone that worked at a cash register, stole the $20 bill. The guy that he fired came back and decided to sue my dad and said it was wrongful termination. And unfortunately, we had to pull out of my college fund that were, I think they're not called grants. What are they called? Bonds. The company that he worked at would give him. He worked, he's a union job worker, and they would give you bonds for your kids' future college funds. And we had to pull out of that fund to pay for the lawyer to beat this guy on a wrongful termination suit. The guy said he didn't do it. Anyways, and I didn't realize it then, but that was a thread. I've always remembered that story. I blame my dad for it. I say, hey, that's why I didn't go to college. I didn't have any money. Yeah, right. That's not why. Yeah. That's not why. And that's been a thread that I've always thought of, right? My stint at DocStop helped me understand SMBs at a deep level. And then, running ZipRecruiter, we really learned the kind of demands and needs of the small business owner. The truth is, man, they just don't have the money. They don't have the money to do the things that the Fortune 500 companies with tons of liquid capital available to them to build these institutionalized, big infrastructure teams that can help you not worry about anything except innovation. Well, yeah, right? With that setup, it makes innovation almost seem easy. So why is it that we have, 5.6 million or 4 to 5 million actual entities in the US that employ more than 50% of the American population, robbed from the fluidity to innovate? And we thought that we should start with solving the human problems that they deal with every single day in HR. And so that's why. Okay. And just to give people some perspective, if they haven't heard about Bambee yet, they will soon, but you've seen incredible growth even this year. So can you talk a little bit about the trajectory of the business? You talk about what you've grown to. Yeah. So we've been at it for 4 years. I have a hat on because I'm bald underneath now because of all the stress. I'm just kidding. I have plenty of hair. Yeah, that's not true. That's not true at all. We started 4 years ago. What can I talk about? We are growing. We have thousands of customers around the U.S. So just in case for those that don't know, Bambee offers an HR manager to what we consider the micro SMB, so less than 99 employees. We give an HR manager who manages your policy, your procedures, the employee interactions you have with your team. We stay away from stuff like payroll. We want to help you with the compliance aspects of the business. And we do that all for $99 a month. No BS. That's the actual price, right? Mm-hmm. We run HR now for 50,000+ employees in the US. And we were growing like crazy. I can't say too much about the growth numbers. No, well, I'll say things you can't. So like I was talking to somebody about Bambee who's kind of in the business and not the HR business, but the kind of tech, if you want to call, everything that we do tech. But anyway, we were talking about Bambee and they're like, I know it's the next unicorn. I know it's hot right now. I know everybody's like totally excited about what's happening here. I mean, the buzz you have around the business right now is insane. I mean, it is a hot business that you have built from zero. And so, transitioning that, Allan, is, the first point of the podcast was to talk about how to deal with COVID as a business owner, right? And things are just, this is going to be a very different conversation, but can you at least talk about that? Because one of the central themes with people we've been talking to is like, when there's a crisis and it threatens the economy, people can freeze up, they can be totally risk averse, and they can basically go, we're going to hunker down and wait this out, right? Yeah. But you went the other way. Yeah. And fortunately, we've been working together and it's been productive. But can you talk about your decision-making process when you started seeing the news and how much hardship was going to be happening, especially to small business,
and why you decided to go the other way.
Yeah. So, really good question. So the company was growing really fast at the first half of this year, the first quarter. We had plans to go out and raise our B round, our growth round, primarily because of the unit economics of the business, growth, and the health of the company. It's just right before COVID. Every company, a company like ours is getting multiples through the moon. I'm not going to say a number because then I'll ceiling myself on what people want to give me during the round that I'm raising currently. And then COVID happened. And I think any rational and smart CEO did not immediately take action until you had enough data to tell you which actions to take, right? And so we paused. We actually stood still for a second. And we didn't change much, but we stood still. We didn't make any decisions. We didn't let go of any employees. We didn't pull back on. We didn't spend any more money on marketing. We held. And the reason we held was honestly to see, where was this going to go? And the economy it's a pendulum, right? You got bull market, bear market, recession, growth market. And so there's always activity. It's the type of activities that change. Certain businesses thrive under both sets of activity lists, right? And so we thought Bambee was one of those companies. We weren't sure because we hadn't had a recession yet. We priced the product geared at a recession. We navigated ZipRecruiter during the recovery, right? So I know a little bit about navigating an affordable SMB focused business during a time of crisis, specifically during the recovery. And we held still. And what did we see? We actually saw something really interesting, which was during a growth market, companies are dealing with employee issues, hiring. How do I speak to someone about this? A lot of interaction internally around the needs for HR. But during contraction, they're thinking about layoffs. They're asking, what is a furlough, right? Can I furlough someone? What's the difference between a furlough, a layoff, and a termination? Do I have to give them benefits if I furlough them? If I furlough them, do I have to give them an offer letter when I bring them back? Hold on. Can they get unemployment if they're on a furlough? Do I have to approve that? Does that make my unemployment insurance go up? And so the only place to go to at the moment is a search engine. Bambee happens to fit squarely in the middle, where we are a company that has high demand during a growth and high demand during a bear market. And so once we had enough weeks of that, we got really aggressive. We, I think, nearly doubled our marketing spend. We're spending millions of dollars a month on marketing currently, and growing. We're growing 5x year over year at the moment, and growing exponentially quarter over quarter. We almost doubled our number of new customers from March to April. Our new customer growth was nearly 100%. Now look, behavior changed. And I think just to stay on this topic for a second, my dad said a thing to me that really pissed me off. He said, hey, aren't you lucky that your company is just surviving during this crisis? Luck is part of it. It is true that I don't run Shoe Dazzle, right? That is true. But we also have a really good team who obsesses over data, so that as company and customer behavior changed, so did the company. We rethought pricing. We rethought what people's willingness to pay for a similar service was. We rethought our customer buckets. And so we made changes that helped us survive, but demand for the company has ballooned over the last month or two.
Yeah, which is extraordinary. And I know from some of the harder days when the jobless reports were coming out and we were seeing businesses close left and right. I mean, I also saw you really connecting with the customers who were in so much pain and were not in a growth, did not have a growth opportunity, right? And you actually took some steps to manage your product and your offering to help them a little bit. Why don't you add a little bit about that so people have context for what you did for the customer?
Yeah, it's funny, I think I built this company because I wanted to make a difference. And I thought in the short term, we'd make some difference. In the long term, based on, when we get to scale, we'd actually make a world of difference. What I did not anticipate in a million years was that we would be essentially on the front, we were essentially the healthcare workers for small businesses. And that's not at all to equate a life to an entity. Clearly a life is important, but when those guys were looking at ways to survive and how to navigate survival, we were the place they went to. right? We've helped tens of thousands. We've had tens of thousands of helpful moments with companies. We actually opened up the platform to non-customers for a moment. We held webinars with content that was typically available to Bambee customers. We opened that up for free to most small businesses around the country. We had tens of thousands of companies join those webinars. We answered every single question. So every time a question came into our Zoom calls, they were logged. They were then added to a list. And if we could not answer it on the call, we had a task force internally that answered every question in great detail and then either sent it to the customer, and then every question and answer was posted on a public forum on our website. We build an intersection between accessing PPP loans with some of our partners and helping to figure out how much those were, how to calculate them. We gave guidance on who should keep their jobs versus not. I'll be honest, it felt like responsibility we did not deserve because it was so profoundly important. But we thought that I looked up and I was like, if not us, then who? There was just there's no way around it. And so, I think we offered free services to customers in Los Angeles. We did as much as we could for a company as young as ours. I think what's important to remember is just because numbers are up and to the right, small companies like ours still have limited liquid capital, right? And so sure, growth may be maybe up and to the right, but you're still not a profitable business. That's the nature of VC-backed companies. And so we were trying to do this, trying to help other companies survive while also thinking about how much cash we had left to survive and trying to walk the line of playing like the right role for the moment because it's the right thing to do and these customers have trusted us with their livelihoods versus, hey, I've got a team of people here with families who, I've got over 100 people on my health insurance rate for the company. I have to make sure the company survives to protect the people that work for us. It was, I say it all the time, but doing this thing is a Rubik's Cube, man. I guess ultimately there is an answer, but you only know if you're right at the end.
Yeah. So you did a great job navigating that. We run into the greatest financial crisis in, 100 years or whatever we want to liken it to. And then there's starting to be, in my view, some exuberance around the country. Hey, things are going to start to open back up. The death count is coming down. And then last week, this happens, and a lot of us are just like, all of a sudden, opening our eyes and going, we got another problem, and it looks very different, but we got to deal with it. And it's got everybody's attention. But I want to know what that process has been like for you, because this may not feel as new. This may not feel as shocking. This may have a very different reaction than what it might be like for me or for somebody else. So how do you, let's start it this way. Imagine I've been in a coma for 6 months and I just opened my eyes and called Allan. What the hell just happened?
Yeah. And I think it's important as we have this dialogue to let's go step by step to where we are now. But there's a lot of nuance at each of these moments that I think is profoundly important.
Yeah.
You said it at the beginning of this. I do not have all the answers. I'm not going to speak for all people of color. I will speak for myself.
Yeah.
But you use the perfect analogy, which is, and I'm going to say some stuff that may come off as offensive. And I promise you, my best intention here is to one, try and expose what people like me are feeling in a way that can be not only heard, but received by people who do not feel it. And I'll tell you my first thought when you just gave me the question around, you just came out of a coma. That is what Black people feel like just happened to all white people. Mm-hmm. Where have you been?
Yeah.
So it feels like we have been awake for a long time. And so, when I have my friends who say like, wow, can you believe what's happened? At some point, it had its novelty, I think, for Black men like me. It was novel for someone who was of a different race to say, hey, did you see that person get killed? There was a novelty about it that I appreciated. It was rare that we've been saying this has been happening for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And there just haven't been enough cameras around to catch it. It was rare, and so we appreciated it for a moment. And then around the 5th year and the 12th black person, it was no longer novel. It was, as I thought about it, I thought like, yeah, I saw it. It almost got more upsetting every time we had to engage in the dialogue because of how little change had happened from the last event. And so the novelty wore off. And then I found myself sitting back, watching everyone else realize the world we've been living in.
Right.
And so, I think for me, this is not surprising. I think it never gets easy to watch a guy die on camera, but it's not surprising. That's the world I've lived in my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as you look around and see your connection to people all around you who have not had that experience, who have not had that awareness, how do you approach them? Like, let's start with the professional piece, because you were sharing some stuff with me that I think would be really helpful. I mean, talk a little bit about how you have been talking with your team.
Yeah. And I apologize for some of the pausing. I just want to make sure I get the phrasing on this.
Yeah,
stuff.
sure.
It's also,
look, this is heavy stuff, and do what you need to do.
I mean, it's also not necessarily the interviews I do, right? I'm used to talking about technology, marketing,
right,
and running a business. And so for the first time, I'm finding my two worlds proactively collide, not reactively, not meaning I'm a black guy and I interact with people in a business setting. I'm a black man and I'm letting you know that proactively because I have some things from this body in which I'd like to talk to you about. Yeah. That's a different type of interaction. And it's the intent behind it is bigger. And the vulnerability there is just hard to explain. It almost feels exposed. My team is awesome. They're authentic. They're vulnerable. They're good people, and we talk about a range of topics. My job there is usually to facilitate. I sometimes tell people my viewpoints, but I never push their viewpoints on other people. And after this weekend, a couple of things happened. I think I was allowed to not be, because I grew up with it and the feeling of feeling slightly different, and the thought around like, hey, should I put this hat on in this location? Hey, the police are to my right. Let me turn my music slightly down to make sure they can see both of my hands. Hey, I would normally get over, I would normally just keep riding in this lane, but I'm nervous because there's a cop behind me. Let me just get over into the next lane so that he can pass me because I'm nervous. Some of those things I think everyone feels, right? It's the reason you feel them that's different. I'm not afraid of a ticket. So getting pulled over for a ticket isn't the reason I get over, right? I switch lanes because I'm afraid if that ticket turned into something else. There's a feeling that comes over my body that is completely different. So let me come back to the question, which is how have I been articulating this to my team? Well, this weekend I watched TV and I was unable to run from it this time. Normally I'd see it and I'm like, this is bullshit. I do the research. I come out on my position. I talk to my friends and family about it, but not the company. This time I'm stuck at home. And I had no choice but to sit in all the feelings. I had no choice but to go on Facebook and see it. I could not go to the office. I could not go to a restaurant. And I denied it somewhere between, like, I refused to engage. And this is just honest, right? And you're running from it. I was, for sure. I didn't want to see it from maybe Tuesday to Wednesday or Wednesday to Thursday, sometime before the weekend. And then at some point on Friday or Saturday, I thought, I can't keep running from this. I have to see what's going on. And then I was just entrenched in it. Look, man, I'm a black man in tech. I now have a little bit of power because I'm a CEO, which means sometimes you get to kind of mask how the world sees you because of your skin, because you have a little bit of power. I watched TV this weekend and I saw every mask that I thought I had built was just unmasked. There's no way. And so because of that, I could not run the company on Monday without addressing my skin color to the team. I thought it was, I felt called to do it. I've never used that word before until this Monday. I never felt called to do anything. I do things I want to do. I felt called to do it. Who possibly would talk to them about this, right? I've got people of color who have to be having high levels of anxiety after this weekend. Maybe we're at the marches. I've got everyone in between who, was in a neighborhood that had looting this weekend, and the topic of the looting was black men being killed by police officers. I've got people who are upset about their communities burning down and can't seem to reconcile if they have the right to be upset. And if I'm upset, does that mean that I don't care about Black lives? And how do I square those two things together? And I felt called to acknowledge it. It felt wrong to not start the day. So we canceled all of our meetings the first half of the day, and we held a race forum where I talked openly about my experiences as a Black man in the country. Never shared any of these stories with my team before. And I asked for them to practice empathy, and didn't tell them how to feel, but I told them how I felt and gave them permission to feel what they felt.
As you think about how common or how irregular this isn't, and you think about, you were talking earlier about like, you may not have even been conscious of the adjustments you were having to make in your life because of something that just was your reality, right? You shared a story with me recently that I found really powerful about your approach. And let me also just say, Allan, one of the things that I cherish about our friendship is that you are a safe person to talk with. And like, you're worried about saying something wrong. I'm worried about saying something wrong, but you're very gracious with other people, even if they completely disagree with you. And I think you have been somebody that manifests what I really seek for myself and my company, which is we can engage in dialogue, even though we might come from a different place, and the conversation doesn't stop. And I think you've had some experiences that you've shared with me, and I think it'd be helpful for you to share with others about how you have persisted through some of the hate and limitations that's imposed on you, and whether or not it's been worth it in the long run. I mean, can you share some of that? Do you mind?
No, not at all. It's a story I hadn't thought about until this weekend, probably for my entire life. And it's, when I was in high school, I went to Warren High, go Bears, Downey, California. And I met a girl, and her and I became good friends. And, remember in high school, you got like, there are multiple gates open that people go out of, and depending on which direction your house was, you walk out of the east gate, you walk out of the north gate. And so I walked out of the northeast gate, and so did she. And we'd been friends for a minute in school, and then we walked out together. We were excited that we were both walking out of the same gate, and we walked and walked and walked and walked. And I think it felt like a couple of miles. I can't remember how far my house was, but it was my grandmother's house actually. And then we turned down the same corner. And we were so excited, right? Because this is my new friend. Like we both come out of the northeast gate. We walk in the same direction for miles. We both turn on the same corner. We keep walking. Turns out she lived in the house right behind mine. And I was excited. And a couple of weeks later, she invited me over to her house. And I'm excited. I have a friend that lives right next to me. And, mind you, I had been going to a private Christian school for years. I didn't know anyone. It was my freshman year. I had just started meeting new people. I was terrified to go and meet new people. And so I finally had a friend, and I got to her house, and her dad wouldn't let me in the house because I was Black. He told me I had to sit outside. I said, okay, no big deal. I just want to hang out with my friend. So no big deal. And I did. And I went over there all the time, and I stayed outside. Eventually he thought I was kind of good enough to cut his grass, and he gave me $20 to cut his grass, but I still had to stay outside. And I didn't mind it, dude. Like I liked cutting grass. I thought yard work was super fun. Like I was one of those weird kids. Over time, years and years later, that girl was now my best friend in over 20 years. And her dad, as he passed away from liver cancer 5 years ago, made me promise to take care of his daughter when he was gone. And, I get chills every time I tell that story because, the truth is you can affect change. And, you really can make people through interactions love you and change their minds. And if you're patient with them. But all that said, why the fuck do we have to? Mm-hmm. Right? Like both. And here's what I mean about conflicting feelings during this time.
Yeah.
Because both are true, right? Like, it's true that you can affect change with patience and love. It is also true that I shouldn't have to do that.
Yes.
I was 14 when this happened. I was in no emotion. I did not have the emotional tools to work through whatever that was.
Yeah.
Right? You can call it racism. I don't think we have a word for it yet in terms of what it is to the emotional response. Maybe the bucketed word, it's called trauma. But I didn't even know what to do with that. It did something to me. I don't know what yet. Right? But it did. Stuff like that doesn't happen to you and it go away. The more shocking part about it is how okay with it I was at 14. Because I was already developed enough to know that's just the way the world was. I also knew not to tell my parents. Because if I told my parents, they wouldn't let me go over there. So I knew to hide it. And I was okay with it because I wanted the friend. What does that tell you about what you have to do to get love? I mean, there's so many things in there. You have to pay me more to keep unpacking this for you. But there's so many things in there that are unfair is not the word. So I'm going to keep going on this because I think it's important.
Yeah.
So when you get to, I was able to keep repackaging it and being charming. And keep it going. But I had a different household. My mom and dad were so loving and, I had two parents in the home. Not that matters that much, but I had a full support system of love. But if I didn't have that, who knows how that would have impacted me? And so you can't look, what I want to be careful to do is to look at my experience, my outcome and say, he did it. No, fuck that. Mm-hmm. I happen to have the right set of circumstances that just luckily led me to a place with the right Teflon to be able to deal with that in a different way on the other side by still loving everyone of every color and not being super resentful and not having a lot of anger. But man, I was one choice away, one parent away, and one moment away from a completely different set of feelings on the other side of this. And so when we see people, I know you didn't get there yet, but like when you see people like in the streets protesting and you say, you can be mad, but don't protest. Well, sure. Easy for you to say from your couch, never having experienced anything like, and I would say, I do not like looting. I do not like stealing, but I have not been there through the 14-year-old thread of the moment of that protester all the way through to where they are today. To then just throw all their experiences out of the window and then tell them what they have the right to do and how they'd like to show their anger. I don't think it's my right. I have one right, which is to fight for the causes I believe in my way. But I don't think I have any other right. Now, the police should enforce the law if they want and all that. But Americans sitting on the sidelines just, telling people how to feel, completely throwing out why they feel that way is just bullshit.
There's a lot here. And
going, man.
But I mean, you're being so vulnerable, and I think it's helpful for other people, which you could argue you shouldn't have to be helpful for other people, right? And I agree with what you say. It's like it's not a 14-year-old's responsibility to be the adult in as you're interacting with adults, right? But that being said, you kept showing up. And you kept being loving. And I guess the question is, if it hadn't gone down that way, do you think it would have been worth it? If you hadn't had that redemptive moment, the payoff of him kind of going, you were the one, would it have been worth it?
it was worth it with or without his validation.
Yeah. And how do you keep showing up for something like that? How do you keep doing it? How do you not be perpetually angry?
Remember that it is worth it with or without their validation.
Mm.
I mean, like, you know, it was worth it for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, it sucks that we have to play these cards and I have to navigate differently in this world. I totally know it, right? There is even a power dynamic as a Black entrepreneur. I can't flex the way my counterparts can. I can at some point, right? There are turning points of power where you can. I'm cautious. I know when not to, but that's a calculus we have to make that's a little bit differently. But to answer your question, it's worth it because of us, of me, of you. I get to wake up every day and, you know, I live in $1 million house in the hills, winter chicken dinner. And you know, and that's for me. And I did that, and I figured out how to navigate this muddy lake that we call society, while, you know, wiping my eyes, wearing goggles, and trying to see the best I could through sometimes really cloudy situations. But we're the reason it's worth it, not for the change on the other side. And hopefully at the end of that, there's change that follows it. But it isn't the reason to keep getting up. It's the side effect.
Yeah. Well, and as the white guy on the other side of this conversation,
you're white.
You know,
there's white people on the call.
Well, most people are podcasting, so they may not. If you didn't tell them, and if I didn't say anything,
no, you sound like a brother to me.
So listen. You know, you said something that I think a lot of people are feeling, which is like, you know, what I started noticing, like I wasn't paying attention till like Friday night. And then I got off of email and off of conference calls. I'm like, oh, something's happened here, and started paying attention. Right. And there's, you know, I think there's a lot of people that want to help, but it's becoming clear that an emoji is not enough. An Instagram post is not enough. And, you know, being able to say you've got friends who are Black is not enough, right? There's still, like, the work is not done in this country, right? And I think many of us just wish we could move on and say, well, that's behind us now, but obviously it's not.
Yeah.
And so how do you help? How does somebody in my shoes help? How do the businesses that you're dealing with on a customer side, how do they help? How do they be constructive?
Sure. I think, let's unpack those two things, because I think how do I help as an individual is different than how does a business help?
Yeah.
And let's unpack the first one, which is how do I help? Now is the time to ask yourself questions that are going to make you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
When you say I have Black friends, do you?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have Black friends?
Mm-hmm.
Because when my friends are stranded on the side of the road, I go and help them get off the freeway. Mm-hmm. If my friend is calling me because they're in a lot of danger, I'm going to go over there and see what I have to fight to help my friend out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have Black friends, or do you just know Black people?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a tough question to ask, because you may not like the answer that comes out on the other side of it, but that's the only way. You got to go through the hard parts to get to the good parts.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think that's one. I also think that there are different ways of showing that you care. You know, one of the things, and I think I told you this, Dan, part of my guilt this weekend is that I don't feel like I did enough. Like I could have done so much more during the last forever, right? But during the last couple of years, specifically when this stuff was getting really intense and you were seeing kind of a movement and people see this happen more often on camera. And so I could have made a call to do more years ago, and I didn't, right? That feels horrible. It's actually why I couldn't go Monday without addressing it now, right? Those days are over for me. And I think because I didn't do enough then, it has made me feel a level, I've lost the right to tell everyone else how to do it. Until I am in the arena, I can't tell you how to fight it. If I'm sitting in the stands, I need to shut the fuck up. But I'm going to be in soon, and then I'll have a voice on it. But until you jump in there, I just don't think you can do it. Now, there are many ways to help, like, for any of the causes you care about. I think, to me, the Black Lives Matter movement is a wake-up call that people cannot take the things that they advocate for in their minds for granted. You can't just assume that other advocates are going to advocate for the things that you mentally advocate for. You can't do that anymore. And so you can donate, and people protest differently. You can donate, you can speak on forums like this, you can show up to clean up after a protest or protest. The best form of protest, the best thing you can do to help the cause, specifically if you are not a person of color, and actually even if you are, is sit across from someone at the dinner table when nobody is watching and help share perspective, right? My parents, African-American couple, or people of color, when they said, hey, the looting is dumb, I felt I had to share my perspective on what I say, prioritizing humanity, which is, looting is dumb, but I got to prioritize what I care about right now. And first, I care about the dead Black people. And then I care about the drywall and the stolen shoelaces. Mm-hmm. But first, I'm going to focus on the dead Black people. I'm saying it that way on purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the power in that is important. So that's on the people front. And my parents now understand it. Again, we're not validating that, but we definitely aren't criticizing it. And then there's, how do you help as a business? I realized that I play, in this moment, I was able to have a conversation around race with my team in a way that you may not be able to have with yours. And it was deeply helpful to my team. Mm-hmm. There were tears on the call, and, people needed the space. I would say, if you run a business, things like this, whether you are a person of color or not, they take up your capacity, your intellectual capacity, your emotional capacity. And then they make it harder for your employees to do their jobs Monday. You may not see it. They may quit. They may say, you know what? I'm tired of working here. I don't get paid enough. I'm unhappy. They don't appreciate me. But maybe they had enough space from an emotional capacity perspective to deal with some of those things and not even care about them that much until they were overloaded by the world around them. Mm-hmm. Right? And so now you're losing employees. You got attrition. There's a bottom line reason to care about this stuff, because you will see it in the people that work for you one way or another. It's also the right thing to do. So to address it, I think you have to do it. How to do that, if you don't happen to be a Black man running a company, I think is to engage with people of color that you know and ask for help.
Is that okay to do? Like, it's funny. I was doing a little bit of research, like, okay, how do you deal with this stuff? Like, how do you do it? Like, I don't want to walk around just, punishing myself for my own identity, right? But I do want to be helpful. And one of the things I read was, it was like, don't call the first Black person and ask them to like teach you or like tell you what you need to be doing. It's like, do your own research. And then I'm like, oh shit, I hope I'm not being insulting to Allan even to talk to him on this show, right? Like, but people don't know. We don't have a language. Like, we haven't normalized how to communicate. So
I think, one, you've offended me many times. This happens.
Yes. Drop in the bucket.
I happen to feel respected. But so we talked about dueling conflicts, mm-hmm. Right? Two things being true. This is not all Black people are not what's the word? Monolith. Am I using that correctly? We're not, it's not all one.
We're going to have to consult with one of the smarter producers that we have.
I think I got it. It's my non-college degree talking. And both things can be true. I happen to find it respectful. Everything is about intention. I find it to be respectful if someone calls me and says, hey, I feel like I want to do more and I don't know enough. And if you have the space, I'd love for you to help educate me on a topic, right? That's one. It's also true. I had, a friend of mine say, well, I like to use the term all lives matter. Nice person, completely not just realizing that for people that say Black lives matter, all lives matter is a protest to our protest. So, right, not realizing where that came from. And there's moments like that where you just want to say, man, you know what I'm tired of doing? Educating you. I am tired of, why don't you go and Google that and then come back to me. And so, yes, it is exhausting. It is tiring. Yes, sometimes you don't want to educate. It's tiring. We're tired. I'm tired. I just want to go to work and wake up and walk my dog and say hi to you across the street, or ignore you because I don't like you because you're my bad neighbor. Whatever the case is, I just want to do that normal stuff. So sometimes it's tiring. However, I don't think there is another path unless we keep our willingness to educate people who are willing to be educated. I think that's the only way forward.
The other thing is I found a site that I think people should check out. It's Campaign Zero, and it's joincampaignzero.org. And I don't know who put it together. I don't know everything about it, but for this specific issue around police brutality, it seems like they have a very specific and tactical plan to actually really focus in on that issue, and really focus on the policy aspects that can make a difference. But look, the one thing we're gonna evolve this podcast, and one of the themes that I want to spend a lot of time on, which I feel like this is the perfect example of, is that we got to talk to each other, and we're going to say stuff wrong. And, like you said, I'm going to say something that's offensive that I don't think I mean to be offensive with, but it's going to happen. But like, what happens if we don't talk, right? And it seems like that's a big piece of this. And I want to honor you for, how vulnerable you've been. This is not a normal business conversation, and yet it is, but it is coming in now. We can't not deal with it in the business place, in our personal lives. This is here. This is, if we were able to hold it back before, not that we should have, but if we did, that time has passed, and we just have to figure out how to communicate around it. And I can't imagine what it would be like if the roles were reversed, right? Sure. And I was you doing this. So thank you for your bravery and your vulnerability and your willingness to do this. Is there anything else that you want to share that you think could be helpful?
Yeah, I think it kind of leans into the theme of what we talked about today, which is emotional conflict. And I think what happens is, with these complex discussions, people feel the need to choose one of the things in which they're conflicted about. And then they're demonized for that choice. And I think leaning into the conflict and saying I'm conflicted is also a choice. And so choosing to say that I'm conflicted is better because it's actually the truest choice. And not being afraid to say that as a cop-out to some answer because somehow you think you're supposed to have a choice and a perspective on this. You can be confused, and it's up to us confused people to guide each other through this.
Amen. Well, I love you. Thank you.
Love you too, buddy.
All right. We'll keep talking, and we'll have more conversations, but when we do this again, we might talk a little more about the advertising piece, but I think this was really important. So thanks for doing it. Thank you.
Got it. Let's do it after we grow the business, after we raise money. So I got how much money. All right.
Well, if anybody's listening that's in that game, you might want to hit this guy up because it's a rocket ship. So keep on. All right, man. Thank you.
All right.
For show notes, curated media news, and thought leadership, please visit oxfordroad.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, The Influencer. Special thanks to Bianca, Kyle, and Jennifer for helping to make this show happen. And please subscribe on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. If you liked it, leave us a review. And if you have any suggestions for how to make it better, email us, podcast@oxfordroad.com. Thank you for spending this time with us, and above all else, never, never, never give up.